They haven't. They've decided to milk the franchise. They've decided to just, keep the community going. We've now got store, and I don't get me wrong, I hate the Final Fantasy XIV store. Mm-hmm. This is something we probably should talk about in another video, whatever. But it's now just constant store update, store update, store update, store update, because they know people are going to spend the money on trinkets. They know people are going to. Why
does it work for one and not the other? It can't just be
because WoW chucks it down your throat. At least Final Fantasy XIV doesn't. It's just on the launcher. Items have been added to the thing.
Welcome everybody to the Casually Hardcore Podcast, episode 39, making our way towards the mystical 50th episode. Joining us again is Az from HeelVsBabyface. We're probably going to be gushing. I'm very curious as to Az's thoughts on WoW Classic. It came out, it's almost been out for a month. I'm still getting queue times. I don't know about everybody else here watching the podcast live or in chat. But guys, if you don't know about the Casually Hardcore Podcast, we are on all platforms where podcasts can be found. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, the cloud, up above Az's head, right? I didn't know what he was doing, but now I understand. Please go and check that out. Hopefully you enjoy. If you listen on any of those platforms, be sure to leave us a review. It really helps us out. But dude, what is your hot take from WoW Classic? Originally, you were thinking maybe you wouldn't check it out, but obviously, the three of us are all playing it, and I have nothing but positive things to say about it. Az, shows you.
Well, there was the only thing that was the only thing which was kind of making me a bit was Blizzard. I always had the fascination with WoW Classic, but obviously with what had happened with Blizzard over the last couple of years, it's kind of like turning just me off the company. Never mind, but I always wanted, Classic to come back, and I always wanted to play Classic. And then when it got nearer the time, obviously you started to feel the hype building, and you wanted to become part of it. And I had no idea it would explode the way it did. I thought it was going to be good. I thought it was going to be the number one stream game on Twitch. But I would have put it in the realms of maybe 400, 450,000 people watching. So to get 1.2 million people on the launch day was insane. I think it's second only to a Fortnite stream, and that's it. So that was absolutely outstanding. And I streamed that day as well, and there were a couple of thousand in with me, and everybody was just so positive and upbeat, and I couldn't even recall during this probably the week-long period anything negative, anything detracting whatsoever. Everyone was just so excited to have it back. Everyone was so excited to be playing it. And I think what was most interesting is that most people were actually preferring this play style than the current version. I've personally been just in love with it.
So one of the things, and just as a part of the business for the podcast, one of the things that's been really cool and helped us out is we actually have a partnership with Shadow PC. It's a cloud gaming PC. I'm playing Classic on the cloud, and one of the things that really helped me out is the fact that, if I'm not home, I can connect to my PC and say log in and just be in that 5-hour queue. So by the time I'd get home from a meeting or whatever, Chris was out about for some sales stuff for his business. And he's like, well, all right, log in from here and just wait in queue. So by the time I got back. So we do want to say thanks to Shadow PC for partnering with us. Link is in the description. We're also using a product if you guys have ping reduction issues or you have problems with your ping. Check out Exit Lag for more. Links in the description as is kindly pointing out. With the business concluded, we want to touch on. It's been an epic month for September, so we want to talk on about what else we might be playing for just a few minutes before we really just talk about WoW Classic, because there's some really interesting implications here. I think WoW Classic at its core is an interesting case study because it comes back to the concept of you think you do, but you don't. And I think so far the community is saying, we do.
No, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Really,
but
really
that's going to have to be obviously measured with time. But are you playing anything else? Because I think the thing for me is I've been playing a lot of Gears 5, but I'm crazy stupid for that series. What about you? Like, you just WoW Classic, or are you playing anything like Borderlands or 14 or?
3 things. Ironic because Chris has said that as well. I've got 3 things on the go at the moment. I have Classic WoW, which I haven't. I've been ill for a couple of weeks. You're gonna have to forgive the voice, and I'm just coming out of it now. And because I've done everything with my like subscriber base, fan base, with Classic WoW, being ill is a perfect opportunity just to get lost in it. But I didn't want to, because I wanted to share it with my audience. And so I've not touched it since the last time we streamed, but that's purely because of where I want to pick it up with my audience. So I had to find something else. Obviously there's Final Fantasy XIV, but I've been hitting a lot of Destiny 2 in the last couple of weeks. I've been hammering some Destiny 2, and I'm in love with this game right now.
Yeah,
it feels like a game. It feels like a fully realized game.
Mm-hmm.
One of my friends persuaded me to pick up Forsaken, and I was a bit kind of nervy about it after the launch.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
And the
first 2 expansions, it was like, oh, we're still on the same Destiny 1 track here. This is not good. And so I was like, no, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So it's like, this is my fault now that I'm playing it. So I'm not. I'm gonna leave it alone. And I started to hear some decent things, some decent mumblings and stuff. And so I picked up Forsaken, and I picked up the season pass as well. Because some of it was locked off, which I wasn't too happy about the price around it. But
yeah,
everything that's in the game now, this feels like this is what Destiny 2 should have been when it came out. It's so good. There's so many different activities for you to jump into, to get involved with, searches, things to aim for, things to achieve, jump into. I love Gambit. I'm a huge Gambit
Are you
fan.
a Prime guy, or are you just a normal Gambit guy?
I kind of prefer the Prime, but I'll jump into both.
It's so interesting. Like, the community is very visibly divided, because it's like you either like one or the other. Anyway, sorry.
Oh no, I like both. I got the Prime being a singular game just makes it a little bit more frenetic. And just a little bit, you kind of feel as if the stakes are slightly raised in that one. But I do like the slightly slower pace of the original Gambit, because you got 2 rounds. If you lose a round, you're still in it. And there's been plenty of Gambit matches. Thank you, Hound. You're beautiful as well. There's been plenty of matches where we've lost the first round, won the second round, and then maybe lost the third, maybe won the third. But it's like really weird, because like, I could leave a Gambit match after losing 2-1 and be like, God, that was close. That was good.
Yeah.
Not be like, no, it's just like, we'll get him next time. We'll get you next time, mate. And then I've been loving the, what's it called? The treasure thing. I forget what, Menagerie.
Yeah.
Going through the Menagerie. I've been thoroughly enjoying the Menagerie stuff. Jumping in with people about that.
Do you play on PC or do you play on console for Destiny?
I'm on PS4, but I do have it on PC. Oh, we all got it for free, didn't we? We all got it for free. But I think now you can cross save.
Huge addition. And honestly, like, going from like even an Xbox One X and then going over to PC, it is just mind-blowing. The performance and menus and how everything, it's like, people were like, oh, you're playing it, like, man, the load times on this game are long. Switch over to PC, it's like, this is the premier experience. This is the premier version of Destiny. But I was just kind of curious.
I'd like to try it on PC. It is one that I think I'd like to try. And not a first-person shooter guy on PC, but I could do the ultimate sin.
I still play on controller and just laugh when I kill people in PvP. I'm like, I'm a controller player, bitch.
But I don't know if you saw a few days ago, I posted a little snippet. I was in Gambit, and I went through the portal, and I just took the whole team out in with 6 seconds still left.
Nice.
So that's what 4 players in 24 seconds took them all out. First time, only time I'd ever done that.
It's always good when you get those moments.
Adrenaline surge on there. So, yeah, Destiny 2's been taking a lot of my time up, and I've been, I'm really hopeful for Shadowkeep, and I'm really, because it kind of does have sort of reflections of the Taken King, and the Taken King was the premier part of the original Destiny, if you ask me. And I think Bungie handled the break from Activision really well. And recently they came out and they said, hey, we've got nothing against Activision. We just had a different direction. We both had different directions where we wanted to go.
Yeah.
But that in itself said everything, because it said Activision wanted to go this way, but we want to go that way. And I think Bungie do certainly appear to be more customer focused, player focused. What do you like? Let's give you what you like. And it's right now, Destiny 2 is one of the best games out there, I think.
Chris, now, one of the things that Chris has told me a lot in private is that the development of WoW Classic, kind of bringing this back kind of full circle, is that WoW Classic recruited people, paid them less because the budget was less for it. And people, because of the passion that they had for the classic game, accepted that. They're like, I'll come at this, and so they took pay cuts to come work on Classic. And I think that's something that shows in what you're referring to when we're seeing the future of Destiny, kind of that separation, but also with WoW Classic that we're seeing it. Chris, like, you've been playing Classic, you've been playing 14 prior to the show. Why don't you update everybody on what you've got and you're playing, and then we're going to dive into the meat of what Classic means for the future of games.
Yeah. So what Brian's talking about is that I've met with, so I'm part of an online community that has a lot of game devs in it. And game devs in general take pay cuts. That's not unique to WoW Classic, especially when you talk about skill sets that are directly applicable, things like network engineers, systems engineers, things like that, where they could literally pick up their toolbox and go to a non-gaming industry tomorrow. They take huge pay cuts, but I do know some that moved from one sector, one portion of gaming over to Blizzard specifically to work on WoW Classic, and that did entail a pay cut for them because Blizzard just was like, hey, we don't think this thing's going to be that successful. We can only throw so much money at it, which, hopefully they were like, all right, but my pay cut, if you guys do well, you got to owe me that back. So hopefully they get something for all this success, but not privy to that conversation. So that aside, WoW Classic is an interesting thing to balance with 14. So we just came out of the live letter, and I'm spending almost all of my time on WoW Classic and 14. And my break game, my palate cleanser, has been Halo 5, which has been out forever, and is still just holding up wonderfully. Like, Call of Duty, get your act together. Learn from Halo 5. Way to go. Way to deliver a game that I can still log on. I mean, how old is Halo 5 now?
It's actually the longest running gap between a Halo game, so it's at 5 years. And
5 years?
Yeah.
It's forever.
And that's where I'm so happy Infinity is actually launching on the next Xbox from just a base technical spec thing. Just like, don't even bother last year Xbox One. Say goodbye.
It's still
outside of the campaign. Let's just separate what they did in the campaign. It's a game that we never touch, and then the PvP is great.
So I've spent all my time in Classic and in 14, and it's interesting going back and forth because they're going two totally different directions, and I'm enjoying the ride on both. And I think that says a lot for Yoshi P and his team, where they've kind of discovered their identity and they said, we don't need to play catch up with anybody else. We're just going to stick to what works for us, because it would be really easy to see the gap between these is huge. And so I'd be interested in kind of getting y'all's thoughts on this. Mm-hmm. Classic seems to lean into this, I logged in yesterday, and in the process of trying to complete one quest, the respawn was so heavy that I played for over an hour. I leveled an entire time, and I only completed one quest and one hand in. So I played for an hour, and I completed one quest, and I was in the direction with an item already in my inventory that I also turned in. That's all I achieved. Meanwhile, in 14, we just got our live letter this week. And so I just think this is interesting for like what's working for WoW Classic. And they are simplifying crafting. They're simplifying desynth. They've already simplified tanks. They're going the total other direction. Like they're making the game more accessible. The word accessible was used in so many of the features. So many of the features was, how do we get more players involved in this feature? And so playing both of those, it's just this really stark contrast. And I don't know what you guys think of that. Like one game is so inaccessible. Like I walked back to my body 3 times because something spawned on me while I was eating and drinking. You die. And then the other game like is making things easier than ever before.
I want to know your thoughts, Az. That we're going to toss you to that question first.
One of the things to me that's been the standout for Classic is the danger. I actually feel as if I'm in a dangerous world. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm looking over my shoulder all the time. I've got paranoia. You know, I never feel safe, even when I if I've run away from something and break out of combat. And I'm just like, can I rest? Can I eat? Can I drink? I don't know. I'm looking around because the next threat is just there. And I think that's so fun. I think it's just so much fun to be in this world, this environment where any sort of lapse in concentration could be your undoing, and then great, corpse run time, and then you're running back to your corpse, and I'm finding half the time I'm getting killed and running back to a corpse, I'm just laughing at the situation that got me into that predicament. And where is it? Is it Dunmar, wherever, at the end of Hillsbrad? And I teamed up with a group of people there, and when you were infiltrating that place, oh my lordy, it was just hilarious because they're these elites, and you're getting through, and you're managing to fight to a certain area. Then all the bloody elites are spawning behind you, and they're all in front of you, and you're just like, we gotta go on, we gotta press on, we can't turn back. We're beyond the point of no return now. And so you're fighting on, and then some other group comes in, and then there's a misfire, and suddenly everyone gets pulled in from all sides, and it's everyone's running, and it's chaotic, and that chaos in itself, because it's an organic thing, it's not a forced point of the game. The game hasn't forced this. It's the player reaction and interaction that has forced this. And you could be running, let's just run, everyone just run to the exit, regroup, come back in, see where we are. I've just found points like that in the game so much fun, just highly enjoyable. And I like that. I like that difficulty.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that with 14? Does that mean that the modern MMO needs to get harder? Like, what is Classic telling us?
With 14, one of the reasons why I love 14 so much is because it didn't compromise. I loved the fact that the crafting system was so complex, and that if you wanted to get through it, it's going to cost you millions of gil to do so, but the end reward can be you just have to craft a couple of HQ things. Before you know it, you can make your money back in no time. So it's kind of like a risk reward system into how much you invest. And obviously, the more crafting skills you get up, the easier it is to do another one, because you have a high level character, high level crafting system to farm the mats or whatever it may be. So every subsequent crafting job gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and easier and easier and easier. And the investment is time as opposed to money, gear, etc. Gear can be passed down, all that kind of stuff. So I don't like the sound of simplification. I don't like the sound of accessibility, because I think it's a very accessible game. And I think things like the dubbing down is what caused people to leave games like World of Warcraft and look for other alternatives out there. And that's why I think Heavensward picked up such an abundance of players, is because suddenly in Warlords of Draenor, you literally had nothing. They dubbed the game down to such a degree, there was nothing for people to do. And then Heavensward was this non-compromising. To me, when it comes to something like crafting is not an essential part of the game. It's an additional aspect. And so if you make it accessible to everyone, then what is the point in really having it in the first place? Because everyone can do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you make it complex, when you make it time sink, money sink, you have your unspoiled nodes coming up at set times, set periods, etc., then it kind of weeds out the chaff.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have the people who are there invested and want to do that. And the thing with gear in Final Fantasy XIV is you can get top level gear through multiple different avenues: raiding, to crafting, through accumulation of tomes, etc., etc. And they're all pretty much on parity. They're all pretty much there and thereabouts with each other. So you have different options how to get it. So to me, crafting is something that you've got to put the investment in, but you get the reward out of it. Because the people who can't be bothered to do the crafting suddenly become your customers. And they're the people who are just like, well, I can't be bothered to crafting. I'm going to use my money to buy this and buy that. And that's how you start to make your money back and start to make the investment worthwhile in the crafting. World of Warcraft, the crafting in Classic feels currently useful.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are getting those extra buffs on your character. You are getting that nicer gear that you can actually get the upgrade for. So it's all feeling useful. Whereas on live, it's like, there doesn't feel any point to it whatsoever. Because it's so accessible, it's so easy for everyone to do, that you can smash out your levels to get it to top. And you can pretty much get, especially now with the Junkatron, whatever it is, you can just keep on accumulating materials, that you've got this constant surplus of materials. I think everyone's got a gazillion surplus materials in current version of the game. There's just not using. There's just no need, no necessity for them. And there's just no necessity for the crafting. So when you make it too accessible, then everyone can do it. Everyone looks at it as a compulsory task because it's so accessible, so easy to do. And it loses its prominence and it loses its relevance, and it kind of crashes everything in terms of like market. Why who really goes to the marketplace to buy gear now?
Yeah, you do. Like, there's in 14 there is this kind of time frame when that becomes relevant, right? Like with 5.2 there'll be new crafting gear so that everybody, the hard end raiders, can go purchase it, and then eventually from a price perspective it's a little bit more as catch-up gear. Like, okay, you can go catch up by doing these things, or you can just drop in gil. Now, I want to put a concept here in just kind of setting, at least my expectation is that I stepped into WoW Classic with Chris. I haven't had as much time to play as I'd like. That's the fact of being an adult. But honestly, I'm very happy by that fact. The fact that WoW is unapologetically not accessible. WoW Classic in that case, right? It doesn't have to be a game for me, and that's the way I look at it. But when I step into it, I have no nostalgia. I'm not a WoW Classic player. I didn't play in vanilla. I touched it a little bit during the Burning Crusade, casually, very casually. Hit level 30 or 40, kind of rounds. Just barely touched it. And Final Fantasy has always been my bread and butter. But when I stepped into WoW Classic and I started playing it, the pace and the speed, and what I told Chris before we even got onto this podcast to record it, was that the world feels so big. It feels so unapologetically dangerous. It feels that I don't know, I feel rooted to it in a weird way. I don't feel like, again, connected from a nostalgia factor, which a lot of people are like, oh, it's just nostalgia that are bringing people in. I'm like, oh, I'm playing with friends. Social aspects have a huge thing, but I want to tell you a brief story of what my experience was today.
But nostalgia can't hold people.
It can't, and not for the long term. It can be a nice little drug, a nice hit of dopamine, in that regards, that people are like, oh, that was nice, and then move on. But I was running this quest, and there was another person next to me, and they were kind of killing the same enemies. We ended up partnering up together and attacking the quest because it was safer. It ended up being more efficient, and it was enjoyable. And thus, essentially, kind of Chris's hypothesis about like how flying has impacted the world. Like when you look at 14, and I said that if they took it out as a hypothetical of 14, they would have to do some serious other changes to the gameplay and the design, because when you have that aspect, it's easy to jump around from fate to fate to fate. But if you couldn't have that ability, if it took you 20 minutes to run across the map, You know, like if it took you a long time to move, like you'd have a whole different experience, and they would have to either fundamentally change things, either make fates last longer because it knows that it's going to take a lot longer for people to get to the fate because they're going to have to run across the map, or you know, have to funnel more people into the map so that more people are participating at different sections in different areas. So that's just kind of where I was coming from. Like we brought up the term accessibility, and I think that's going to be a real big theme of this podcast. We'll have to wait and see. But
Classic also has options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and this is what expansions don't have, or have certainly filtered out over the years. Like Azeroth is so big, Eastern Kingdoms, Kalimdor, they're massive continents, and you have so many different options about where you can go to level. You can stick around in Hillsbrad for freaking ages, or you can nip across to Desolus. You can nip across the Barrens, to nip across to 1,000 Needles. You can go to the wetlands. You can do this. You can do that. There are so many different choices for you that you can find a place that you're comfortable with, or you can go out and see the big wide world.
Mm-hmm.
And when every expansion comes along, the continents are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And so even in Wrath of the Lich King, you still had certain options about leveling. Do I start off at in I was going to say Borealis, it's not the Borean Tundra, or do I go across to the other one? Do I then move across to this area, that area, that area, that area? You did have some options available. Even at top, do I get a Storm's Peaks or Ice Crown? You still had your options there, but that's all gone now. That's all gone. It's all been replaced with, well, you got to do every zone, but you just get to choose which way you do it. You just get to choose which one you go to first. But ultimately, you're just doing the same thing. And so we no longer have those choices. The worlds feel tiny because we don't have those choices. We don't have those options. We don't have those bigger lands to say, right, well, this time we're going to do this route. Next time we're going to do that route. We haven't gone or accessed this level at all, this zone at all. Let's just go there for the narrative portion of it, or whatever, or the crafting part, whatever it may be. And that is what I think makes Classic unique, because it's open world for a start. It's not zonal. Open world, and open worlds make games feel massive.
Mm-hmm.
They, now we've got Sandbox, and Sandbox can't touch open worlds because Sandbox, they're saying, well, this is a big area. You do something. Whereas an MMORPG was like, there's a big area and we've provided everything for you. So, we've almost got regressive technology nowadays, regressive gameplay technology, because, you're having all these games trying to do massive open world sandboxes, but you got to provide the fun. You got to work out stuff to do, and they're providing such little activities or secrets or whatever it is to get involved with. But when you have these colossal continents, and you can choose where you go, and they could be at certain points. Like I'm level 36 right now. I'm in no rush to level up, no rush whatsoever. I'm just enjoying my time. I'm enjoying this whole experience. I can go to so many different areas right now. It's ridiculous. I could go to Stranglethorn. I can go to I can stay in Hillsbrad. I can go across to Arathi. I can go into Desolus. I can go to 1,000 Needles. I can find something to do that will impact and level my character in probably 7 odd zones right now. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. It's phenomenal. And it just adds to the experience, because I can always return back at another time, or if I do, because World of Warcraft is a singular character game, if I do roll an ult, I can have a completely different experience, a completely different adventure. Yep. And then on top of that, you've got the factions. So if you flip factions, it's a completely different set of stories, complete set of everything everywhere. So that is why I think Classic has such a, such this, no pun intended, but this wow factor.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it was just, there is so much available for you to do, and we've laid it all out. You just choose where you want to go. and how you want to experience it.
Now, I want to ask you a kind of a question. This is to both of you guys. It's regarding the social aspect of Classic. I've talked about essentially what the cost of matchmaking has been in recent titles, and I love matchmaking. I'm a crack addict. When it comes down to it, matchmaking is like crack. Don't take it away from me. I have to have it, but at the same time, I think it's incredibly expensive. It's obviously addicting, and it's totally reshaped the social aspect of it. Now, Classic doesn't have those concepts, but what it does have, what it didn't have in the start, is streaming. All three of us here stream. We all have our communities. We all are able to engage in that kind of content. So it is a little bit of a twist on the Classic experience, right? In that regard. So I'm curious as to your thoughts, Chris, as well, regarding the social aspect, but how technology is actually reshaping our experience with WoW Classic.
Matchmaking, it can work for certain games and it can not be relevant. When I say relevant, it can be actually detrimental to others. Like a game from like Destiny, an FPS, I think benefits massively from matchmaking. It gets everyone in a shooter into the same environment quickly. So if you have tougher end content, you can get straight onto it. In an MMORPG, things are slightly different because the whole pace of the game is meant to be slower. Every expansion lasts approximately 2 years of your life. And everyone is rushing to put in catch-up mechanics. Why? You have 2 years to experience everything. And so in like a current version of the game, if you have like matchmaking, you start to peel away in an MMO the social fabric of a game. Because the more accessible it is, you just get people together quickly. They do the event quickly because everything's made quick. So you can get in, out, put the kettle on, and it's that word accessibility again. We want to make this dungeon accessible. Instead of this dungeon being a 30-minute dungeon like it used to be, it's now going to be a 10-minute dungeon. So people can get in, out, and you peel away and you lose the social fabric of the game. People stop talking to each other. You mentioned yourself, Chris, and I smiled when you said it because it happens organically. When you're in an area and you're killing mobs, and then you see somebody else and they're killing mobs, and you're in the same faction, and then suddenly it's like magnets coming together. You get closer and closer, and then you're just like, "Hey, buddy, should we team up together?" Because again, and it's when he said safety in numbers, which I thought was great, because you're now stronger. You now leveled up. You've leveled. You've grouped together. You've got stronger. There's going to be some social interaction between you because you've organically communicated with each other. Hi, do you want to group up? Do you want to help doing this? How many more do you need? I've got these. So there's just organic conversations which start to develop, and who knows, you could get along and you could start having fun with each other, and you could start building a friendship with each other, and then they get added to the friends list, and then it's a person for the future. And you could meet up in another zone, or you could talk to them in a week down the line, or you could see them, about 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 months down the line. How are you getting on? How are you doing it? Blah, blah, blah. Whatever it may be. Come join our guild. Come in our guild. We'll give you help. So you start to have these more organic relationships together. Matchmaking, when it gets too simplified, like you get into a group finder today on an MMO, there's no conversation.
Right.
There's no true conversation going on.
How fast can we get this done?
Yeah, how fast can we snap through these people? Let's snap through these people. That isn't a social game. That isn't a fun activity to do. If you want to
have chat in the first place?
Well, yeah, exactly. But if you want, because it's for the people who do want to. But if you want to turn an MMORPG, a game which is meant to bring people together into a solo experience, why not create just a single player RPG?
I think that's what a lot of people are craving, right? Because when you look at
this is why though, because they're making MMOs homogenized to. There's no point in an MMO for all these for so many of these games. There's no point in World of Warcraft right now, today, current version. No,
you're good.
Nearly Frenched. There is no freaking point in it being an MMORPG, because you barely, unless you are top end raiding or doing like your Mythic Plus, you don't have to talk to a soul. You don't have to have any social interaction. You don't have to be in a guild. You don't have to do anything of that level. Everything that you need to do, you can queue up at a touch of the button. I can queue up for a raid. I can queue up for a dungeon. I can just get on the mountain, fly to this point. I can fly to that point. You don't have to talk to anyone. You don't have to have any social interaction with it. The only thing is there are other people around you. Whoop-de-doo. You could just change those all out for NPCs. It wouldn't make any difference.
With 14, the classic example, because 14, as it relates to classic, especially Shadowbringers, they attempt to try to address some of those classic ideas in different ways. Eureka is a good example of that. For me, Eureka was more of the uncanny valley. Like, I was like, it's almost ready. It's almost there. And ideally, I'm really excited to see what they do for the next relic as it relates to that, because they had that social aspect. One of the things a lot of people really enjoyed about it was you would zone in, and then everybody was yelling and chatting, and we were all teaming up and trying to figure things out. And that's what a lot of people said, man, it reminds me of the good old days of the MMO where people actually talked.
Right? Yeah.
And
I loved the relic from the from Stormblood.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I loved the, I know it wasn't some people's cup of tea, but I just absolutely adored getting to the area and then grouping up with a massive bunch of people. I felt part of a process. I felt part of a social gathering. I felt part of a group.
You felt part of the world.
I felt as if we were all, but more importantly, I felt like we're all helping each other.
Mm-hmm.
We all had a common goal, and we're all helping each other. Yeah, some people would leave, other people would replace them, but you'd often find that banter started to happen. People were communicating what's popping, what's come up, which notorious monsters come here, what notorious monsters come there, and so you just started to, again. I just felt when I used to stream it, when I do some streams, this is why I would always rave about this when I talk to my audience about it, because it did. I was like, hey, look, people, I'm grouping up. I'm grouping up with others. I can't do this on my own. This whole area is not designed for that. This whole area is designed for social gathering, for social interaction, and not just a couple massive groups to come together for these notorious monsters and stuff.
Now, there's a cost of player agency, right? So what we're talking about is that ability of a player to create their own experience,
That's
that
the blue
ability
age,
to influence their experience, which is something that happens in WoW. It's not a class that created it. It's not a quest that created it. Player agency is that moment that you feel that your interaction with that Murloc quest was yours, and it was yours because we accidentally pulled them all at once, and we were with a group, and this guy was polymorphing them, and we were barely alive, and we made it out, and a spider dropped its eye the first time. That's crazy. Like, there's these moments that were yours, and it's not something, but the cost is Shadowbringers. You can't have that. So Shadowbringers was this incredible story. It's this incredible award-winning movie that we all went and saw. And we all went to the movie theater on different days in different parts of the world. And we all had the same experience. We all got to live and breathe that moment together. And now we get to share that through the, I guess, lighter multiplayer aspect of 14, where we get to kind of go in and we get to run those dungeons again. We get to chat with each other. We get to form these communities and share that, but it is not as visceral as what you get in World of Warcraft in trade for being guaranteed, right? There's a bar there. That Academy Award-winning movie is always going to be at least good to everybody that partakes in it. There are people that will join WoW Classic, have a miserable experience, and quit. And so that's the cost. So like I love both of these games, but I think they're doing something very distinctly different. And
the Shadowbringers is, like I said, the story is unbelievably good. When you break it down, it's just obscenely good. Vanilla WoW, classic WoW, whichever way you want to put it, when Vanilla came out back in its day, it wasn't trying to tell a huge story so much as it was saying, there are things that have been going on. This is why the Forsaken are here, because of Arthas and the Lich King. These are events that have happened because of the Warcraft series, but it was allowing people to create the world, to make the world feel alive. It was so much more a social gathering as opposed to a narrative gathering. You know, where people would go, oh, I'm coming together because this is a Blizzard-orientated game. I'm coming together because it's got this character or that character. It wasn't that. It's I'm joining World of Warcraft because you're getting these huge groups of people, you're getting these massive guilds, you're getting these huge raids. You know, it's really hard, it's really tough. You got to team up with people. Everything, all the emphasis was social, 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 social. 15 years later, don't want to talk to anyone. Don't want to talk to anyone. That's where we've gone in design. The agency's been taken away so much. It's now a solo, non-interactive, non-productive experience. Whereas 15 years ago, and this is why I think people are gravitating back towards it, because it was built and developed on social activity, people coming together. And games just don't do that anymore.
So what happens at the end of it? What happens at the end of 2 years, right? We're on an accelerated schedule because there isn't going to be progression. So in-game raiders, they're going to figure out how to execute something and then they're going to move on to the next thing. They know how parry haste works. They know how hit rating works. They know how boss mechanics works. They know where the gear drops. So there isn't any surprises. And so, Encourage, if they don't change the set of ingredients to do an AQ unlock for a server, it's going to be unlocked day one. World first servers are going to have those materials built up in their banks, and they are going to drop, 16 bajillion, whatever it was, rune cloth or whatever, bandages. And then, you need 25,000 heavy bandages. Well, we've worked together with the other 3 top guilds on our server, and we have them in stock. And so when that patch drops, it's not going to be this sudden market-breaking moment like it was the first time. No, it's going to be instant. So what happens at the end? Do we relaunch it like a season? Do we go into the Burning Crusade?
That's just the cost of time, because time is told what we all need. I think ultimately, when it comes to Classic, people are looking to get together for the raid experiences. The unlockings of Anchorage, you're never going to be able to recreate that because people know what's required of them. They can prep, they can, all this stuff, they can be ready. That's an unfortunate casualty of this. But the actual Anchorage experience itself, the actual Anchorage raid, holy cow, I'm going to have probably hours of fun just watching videos, possibly on stream, of Cthulhu wipes.
Have you run it for Transmog? Have you gone back and run that in Retail solo?
Yeah. I've got all this stuff.
So because those 40-man raids were meant to be 40 people, those hallways are enormous.
Yeah.
Like when you're in there alone, like it's huge because every pull was this whole mechanically, and there was all of this stuff happening. But like when you're in there by yourself, just one-shotting everything, you're like, what is all this space for?
But just imagine that you're going to have 39.
You had mounts
going through Anchorage. It's going to be bonkers.
Specific dungeon mounts designed to be used inside of Encourage because the zone was just that big. I mean, if you die on Cthulhu, like
Scorpion Lord.
Some of those walkbacks are long. Don't die.
I know.
And then the bonus boss, which can only have damage done by there's only a certain type of damage that can do to it. So when you go to run it for Transmog, or it's an item that frees it up, I don't remember, but there are
multiple creatures out there. I was fighting a creature the other day, and I was casting Immolate on it, and it was coming up immune.
So we've been talking a lot about, obviously, WoW Classic and 14. It's something that we all share and just have a huge passion for. But the other kind of, I guess, elephant in the room is still retail. It's BFA. It's 9.0. It's the rumors or the confirmed rumors of the level squish. It's the aspect in which that it's a game in which that I think people are legitimately frustrated with it, and they've been for a while. What I've always kind of said was that the exodus that happened with BFA didn't surprise me. The writing was always on the wall. What it was I think the kind of the glass shattering moment a lot of people had, where they're like, I'm actually not having fun. All the data that they are like, oh, people are having fun because blah blah blah. Eventually, it's like the sunk in cost was just too much, and all of a sudden there became a real viable competitor, at least in their minds, especially as Shadowbringers was ramping up, to say like, hey, there's this other thing, this is other place that people who have had that transition over to. But what can BFA learn from WoW Classic? I think 14 can also learn something from it, and if it's successful, because one of the questions we have is how long do we think it can hold up? My hope is for a long time. My personal hope is that it sets up a whole nother timeline in how MMOs and what people find and they enjoy, and how they're developed going forward as long as there's a market to support it. Because you think you do but you don't is rooted in, there's no business acumen, there's no reason, nobody's going to play this game, so why are we going to support it? That is currently being held true. But can retail learn anything? Is there any hope for the future of World of Warcraft as it's set based off of its roots?
Well, I mean, 8.2 was a huge step in the right direction. Like I think 8.2 was a better patch than 8.1. I think that there's still a long way to go. Like you can't undo 5 years in one patch, but I think 8.2 was better than 8.0. They've got systems that people are engaging with. I think the problem is that you have to appeal to a broader sense than just like, I like it and there are other people who don't. You have to be able to appeal to everybody the way WoW Classic did. And so there's still people that don't like 8.2. And that's a problem, is how do you appeal broad scale? And how do you swing back without disengaging the people who are engaged now? Because we've seen that in games like Destiny, right? When you appeal to the audience you've lost, you can sometimes lose the audience you have. And so you have to be really careful to not disenfranchise the people who are still playing. That's a tough question. I don't think 9.0 is doomed out of the gate. I mean, they can do something good. They just have to show us. Do you feel differently, Az?
I'm not a fan of 8.2. I think it's dull as dishwater. It doesn't offer anything different. Yeah, it wraps a couple of things up in a different skin, but this is WoW's problem for years. Is it's not offering anything different. I don't think, without trying to be pessimistic, it's not an attempt to be pessimistic. You have the person who said, "I think you think you do, but you don't." Is the president of the company now. He's the guy running the show. Or he's at least the puppet master for Activision, and he's having his strings pulled, which is a different story for a different time. But this is the person who has gone to Star Wars Galaxies and said, hey, Jedi's for everyone, and ruined that. And then he's come over to World of Warcraft, and he's gone, you want... Because the whole you think you do, but you don't. What he's saying is, you want our design of the game, not the old version of the game. That's intrinsically what he's saying. Mm-hmm. No, you want the current version. You don't want the way it used to be. And he's wrong. And he's been proven wrong. And I guarantee you, retail WoW will not change a jot. Because what they'll say is, you want that style of play, you've got WoW Classic. Mm-hmm. Maybe WoW Classic, they'll do Classic Burning Crusade servers 2-3 years down the line, where you'll have the option to transfer your character from the classic server to the new Burning Crusade server, and so you can continue from there or maintain your classic. They might do something like that. But if you want that type of gameplay, you want that style of game, there it is for you. Current World of Warcraft is for everyone. It's the big smiley Ronald McDonald.
Right, but what if current Warcraft represents 5% of the WoW population? What if it represents 1%? Like, what if it's essentially they're like, well, obviously we were wrong. Like, I don't know what that percentage number looks like, but at some point when the numbers come back, and if they're just pissing money down the toilet because they're continuing to invest in retail, but everybody's spending their time in classic. Like I'm sub, but I'm not installing retail. I have no intention to play retail.
I don't think these people can do it. I don't believe in this team. I don't believe in this current World of Warcraft team at all. I don't believe in Ian Costas. I don't believe in J. Allen Barak. I don't believe in these people. I don't believe that they are the people who could, even if they had the remit of saying, right, the next World of Warcraft expansion is going back to its roots. I don't think they understand the roots. It's taken so long for Classic to come around, and it seems more not out of any sort of altruistic desire for people to have it. It's more out of, God damn it, the code's out there. Nostalrius have said that if we can't work together, they're going to just release the code anyway. We're going to have tons of private servers when we can get the business. How did Blizzard get rid of gold sellers? They became the gold seller.
Right.
That's how they got rid of gold sellers. We're going to sell the gold. How would you get rid of classic private servers? You become the classic private server. That's kind of the mentality that it appears to be. I'm not saying it necessarily is, but it appears to be.
Right. But if we think of just like economics and like the invisible hand of kind of any kind of market, what I would say is that I've seen this numerous times. It's that we've got so much data. We have machines that can predict with like a great likelihood whether women are pregnant or not based off of the things that they purchase in a store. And there's so much data that's out there, and I believe that data's only good as long as you're actually reading it and interpreting it correctly. And I would say that the data has shown these individuals, and these are individuals who are data minded. They're not maybe passionate. And a lot of the things
why don't you put the data away and listen to people?
Well, right, but how do you listen to
10 million people?
10 million people, and that's where it comes down to like a stark difference, kind of bringing back 14.
The people who scream for the dubbing down, the voice that they've been listening to, every time they've conceded and gone down that avenue, what's happened to the game? It's a funnel. It's gone smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Because it's when you had Classic, Classic didn't have a huge subscription base. It was the Burning Crusade that sent everything off into the stratosphere. But the Burning Crusade wouldn't have sent everything off into the stratosphere unless Classic was there.
Right.
Classic put all the roots. It put all the foundations, very strong, firm foundations. And then people were starting to hear a little bit more because it's a new product. It takes a while to catch on anyway. People are starting to hear. People are starting to hear about, wow, okay, I'm hearing, listening. First expansion comes out. God, people, this expansion's amazing. Right, okay, we've got to get on this. We've got to get on this now then. This is what a lot of, and so you get stratosphere. And then when it came to Wrath of the Lich King, made a couple of concessions. But the fundamentals were still the same in terms of huge open world. We bring in, we lower the difficulty for raiding a little bit to get a little bit more people into raiding by bringing in the Naxxramas. But when you still had the Naxxramas, you still had plenty of things to go for. The Undying, Immortal, things like that. So top levels still had plenty of things to aspire to go to. They tried different versions of raids. They tried a huge Old War raid with a organic, heroic progression in the fight, which I personally thought was a great mechanic. You know, you can either just kill the boss, or you can initiate the mechanic and turn this into a heroic fight without having to go, let's set the difficulty to heroic, come in, let's have raid finder, let's have normal, let's have heroic, let's have mythic. You had a much more organic experience when it came to that. You didn't clutter raiding up too much. I know a lot of people didn't like top. I thought top was good. I thought because it just had a different raid experience. You were just in a tournament. It was different. You know, the whole thing surrounding it, I thought was a really good idea. And then you had the ultimate raid of Ice Crown Citadel. And I'm just putting Halion aside because, you know, that was kind of like chucked in just for shits and giggles. But they still had everything that World of Warcraft gave you in the previous expansions, while just adding that little layer of accessibility too. When they started to go on the flip side is when they changed the world, when they concentrated all their thoughts into the wrong area. We've completely changed Azeroth. We need to redo all the quests, all the work's going into there. What about the end game? Balls, we haven't got one. What about Deathwing? We haven't done any development work with them whatsoever. There's no development. There was no development going forward. So suddenly we had like wonderful characters. Arthas, so much lore behind him. Illidan, so much lore behind him. Broken heroes, people who wanted to do the right thing, but had very different ways of going about it.
Mm-hmm.
Illidan's was whatever the cost.
Right. The ends justify the means. So
yeah.
As long as he's successful, he will sacrifice his own people if he wants.
If I have to kill 10,000 to save 1 million, type of person.
And if I have to do it myself, I will.
But it got out of hand, and then you got ego, you got this, you got the other that all came in. Arthas so determined that he becomes the thing he didn't want to be. He becomes the thing he was actually trying to chase in the
almost beautifully so. Has to.
Yeah, one of the best stories ever told in WoW, if not the best, probably the best when it comes to Arthas. Deathwing.
Yeah, I mean,
Arosh.
As somebody who doesn't just play for lore, I enjoyed Cataclysm. I especially looking back at the sheer amount of dev time they spent. I mean, 14 will need a Cataclysm expansion at some point. There was a huge amount of back end that was corrected with Cataclysm. There was a huge amount of going back and rebuilding zones that graphically were just a tax on the system, going back and doing the rework of the equivalent of ARR quests. I mean, Cataclysm was their chance to go back and redo all that. 14's going on it right now. So if the back half of Shadowbringers feels light, just know that they are compressing all of ARR with their dev resources right now. That takes an amount of effort. That takes time. New Game Plus is a tax on the system, and whether or not the system can bear it, we have yet to see. It could be an incredible expansion all the way through, in which case, why did Cataclysm suck? But honestly, I thought Cataclysm, they were really clever in the way that they masked it. They put in things like the Battle Pass system. They put in the Firelands, so you had this slow unlock where you felt like a little piece of that AQ kind of you're attuning to this quest by showing up and telling this story with your daily efforts. That was just a really clever, slow release Advil. That's all it was. It was just we can't have people getting to the end of Firelands too quickly, so we'll just gate them by, you haven't done 30 sets of dailies? Well, then you don't have it. So, I think Cataclysm was really clever. I think where they started to get off was when they started to compromise with what the community complained about. So you had people saying, well, now I can't catch up because everything's time released. So in Pandaria, when they started to do things like lift daily caps, that's when the game started to feel overwhelming to me.
You also lost your choice. Because up until then, top leveling had always been choice.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout Burning Crusade, throughout Classic, throughout Wrath of the Lich King. Plenty of choices. Cataclysm. You got to go from that zone to that zone to that zone to that zone. The only choice that you had was Bashir or Hygel, and that was it. You had your base level start. Otherwise, you're just being funneled in the same direction. Not many choices. When you got to top level, barely anything, because all the focus had been on the rebuild of the world. So yeah, you had this awesome rebuilt world in terms of, you couldn't fly before. Now you can see things from a different perspective. Now you can fly over Anchorage. Now you got these other zones, Old Doom, suddenly you can see Old Doom. Arathi Highlands, suddenly that comes on, that comes into the equation as well, etc. But the cost was a sparse end game with a piss poor villain at the end of it, who did nothing, who vanished for 3/4 of the expansion.
Now, I want to bring it kind of back to kind of a final thought regarding a lot of this, because we probably could just dedicate a whole podcast as a podcast itself to the study of like the big MMOs out there in this regard. And I'd love to have Az back because I love his perspective. But there's a few things that I think hit on, because I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a right level of accessibility, but it seems like it went too far. There's a right level of player agency, but it seems like that's been cut. And I think essentially, and obviously that all gets tied into the concept of what makes an MMO an MMO. And I think the answer that I hear from a lot of people is that social aspect. It's that surviving together or dying alone kind of mentality. Sure, MMOs can have content that you can enjoy.
I think Cataclysm did. Cataclysm killed guilds.
It killed guilds?
It turned guilds into money-making machines. And so it lost the social aspect. So people just started to get the guilds level 25, sell guilds. So there was no desire there. And then by the end of Cataclysm, you had Raid Finder as well as group.
Is that when that was introduced? Was in Cataclysm Raid Finder?
Raid Finder was a huge blow. It's interesting to see Final Fantasy having so much success with the exact same footsteps that we attribute to the death of WoW. Raid Finder locking us into a single story, a single way to progress.
Alliance raids still feel as if it requires coordination. Raid Finder doesn't.
Asking players to spend their time between patches on side content that doesn't really matter. Limited sets of difficulties that only ramp up so high so often. I mean, these are all things that are attributed to WoW. One of the only things that 14 is not doing that has been on the list of things that killed WoW is randomized loot. And I mean, we're already talking about limited specs, things like that. So raid comp is still largely locked in both games for your top end groups, and that's why metas form the way they do. So really, randomized loot is the one step that 14 could announce, and they would literally, in my opinion, have the exact list of all the reasons people say that they play classic over retail WoW, and yet I think 14 would be successcul doing it. Well, there's I don't know what's different about the way they take the same ingredients and make a leadership. They make a different pie with the same ingredients.
Leadership. I think that's as hit on it earlier. It doesn't trust the leadership over at and the puppeteers over at Activision with their fingers in Blizzard. It's that a passion I've always argued is kind of the fourth pillar, especially when it comes to the project management of anything creative. But 14 is also it's interesting because it has its own set of challenges due to its nature and how it's developed. Like, I'm really curious to see what Yoshi P and the team would build or could build if they actually had ample time, ample planning, ample opportunity. And we believe that that's actually going on behind the scenes right now, with some time as probably a mid-20, 20-something, 2025 release, if it is kind of that MMO. Like, what would they build? But I don't know. Like, I'm interested because I don't want... Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's actually really interesting because we've seen with Final Fantasy XI, they understood it was coming to an organic end.
Mm-hmm.
And so they needed to work on another future MMO, which, when did 11 come out? 2001?
I was in college. It was my first time. I'm thinking 2003 in the US. I think it was 2002. It was 2002.
You're older than WoW.
Yeah.
So they understood in 7 years. Now, we know 1.0 was hot garbage, but they understood that they wanted to have the next gen of MMO, Final Fantasy MMO, ready for 2010. They got it all wrong.
Yeah.
But even getting it wrong, they had a 10-year gap between 11 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
A Realm Reborn making its way back. So they understood that technology, whatever it may be, time, advancement, whatever, you need to progress your MMO. And it's going to come to a lifespan. World of Warcraft should have been working on WoW 2 6, 7, 8 years ago. To be perfectly honest with you, I think they should have been looking after Wrath of the Lich King. It was sort of those times that she was saying, right, by 2015, 2016, whatever.
Now 2020 would be, something.
Even as possibly as late as that, we should be looking at boom, World of Warcraft 2, whatever whatever that would be.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they were working on Project Titan, but Project Titan wasn't World of Warcraft. It was a completely different entity, and it wasn't working. Whereas they could have focused their time and energies on looking at an upgrade, the future of this franchise, taking it forward. They haven't. They've decided to milk the franchise. They've decided to just, keep the community going. We've now got store, and I don't get me wrong, I hate the Final Fantasy XIV store.
Mm-hmm.
This is something we probably should talk about in another video, whatever. But it's now just constant store update, store update, store update, store update, because they know people are going to spend the money on trinkets. They know people are going to. Why
does it work for one and not the other? It can't just be
because WoW chucks it down your throat. At least Final Fantasy XIV doesn't. It's just on the launcher. Items have been added to the thing. WoW released videos. They released videos. Hey, folks, new mount, 5th one of the expansion that you hate, that you're really, really sucking at. Nah. Here, we've got 5 things for you to buy. They rum it down your throat as if they're doing you a favor, and they're not doing it.
It's just fascinating because I have an active subscription to both games. So, I could play retail of either game. And at a raw level, if you just look at the data, if you just look at the what can you do when you log in, what do you have to do to be considered caught up, what does it take to stay caught up, what does it take to get caught up if you're brand new, what's the catch-up mechanics. If you look at, do they both have a store, do they have multiple classes to play, do they have side content, the games have all of the same ingredients, and I have active subscriptions to both, and I choose to play 14 and not retail WoW. And it's just, and then WoW Classic comes along and I choose to play that. And so it's not that I won't play in a World of Warcraft game. I have an active subscription. I'm using that active subscription, but there's something different about WoW Classic and 14. And so that you would think that, okay, well, if those two are in a group and retail's over here,
longer term contents, every patch, there always seems to be something different they want to try. It might work, it might not work.
Right.
But you can still go now. I'm still playing with my Final Fantasy XIV Garrison. Now in Shadowbringers, I'm just starting with Desynth. If I get bored, I can nip over to a multitude of different things. I can get involved in the casino. I can go treasure map hunting. I can go, notorious monster hunting, whatever it may. I can work on previous relics, current relic. I have so many different choices about what I can do, even at top level of relevant expansion. And it will still work. It'll still be viable for you to do. Whereas in WoW, they always seem, it does seem like an insular theme park. And if I wanted to go into WoW now, what could I do? I could do a Warfront. I'd rather stick my bits and pieces into an organ grinder than do a Warfront. I could do an island expedition. Tons of different looking islands, every single solitary one the same. What is the point? Dull as dishwater. I can jump into Raid Finder. Never gonna happen. Never ever. It's not gonna happen.
The difference in a random group of people trying to knock down an easy version of a raid between games is painful. I sat in a Titania run the other day that could not get it down, and I would rather queue for that group 3 more times and not be allowed to log off than hop into one raid finder that does get the clear. I have no idea what they've done, but WoW has the raid finder experience is so miserable.
People in the chat who've come myself. I'm just gonna address them. Which ones of you, if you want to say in the chat, just give some sort of acknowledgement in the chat. Which ones of you watched me stream a few weeks ago when I spent 6 hours in Shadowfang Keep trying to do it because we were too low level, but we were absolutely determined to complete the dungeon. And I think it took us five, maybe a little bit less, maybe 5 hours to complete Shadowfang Keep. And it was one of the most fun experiences I've had in so long.
My first RFC run was an hour and a half.
And I know
Ragefire Chasm. That's the lowest level dungeon in the game.
But we know these areas as well. We've been there. We've done them. We've done them multiple times. We've done them until the cows come home. But being able to do it in a specific manner, being able to do it in a way where it actually felt, number one, tough, because it was tough. Number two, that we can get resources from this place. We can get cloth. We can get whatever it is. Because one thing about Classic, which is, and I think this goes very much under the radar, but hits a massive note, is your character, your man management, woman management, woman management on your character is immense. And you don't have that in current game. You're jumping from one fight. You're never sitting down. You're never doing anything. Whereas in the current version of like Classic, for example, you're drinking a potion during a fight. You're bandaging yourself up. You're having in terms of me as a warlock, I'm getting a health stone down me as well because I'm fortunate to do that. I'm having to bandage my wounds. I'm eating. I'm drinking. The 15-minute cooldowns on those, timers on those, whatever. There's so much more to my character. It feels like I'm in fights when I come out of it because I'm like, I need a heal. I need a bandage. I need to sit. We need to rest. Everyone okay? We need to regroup. And
you have value. I'm excited to party with a warlock because you give me a health stone. I'm excited to party with a mage because I get free water. Like, party with a druid, I get Mark of the Wild. Like,
handing out health stones. Create a health stone. Hand out a health stone. I'm having to get soul shards, so I'm having to be. I have to be aware of what resources I have, what regents I have. So there's so much like attachment to that character. And now it's just like, don't need soul stones, don't need potions, don't need food, don't need anything. Unless I'm doing top end raiding. Don't need any of that. The garbage, useless, irrelevant. So when you're having to chug a potion, when you're realizing that you're getting hit and you're taking substantial damage, when you're realizing when you're casting and your mana bar is going down, it's going down. When you realize that I've got to switch to wand. I've got to get some regen going here. To me, it's just such a more pleasurable experience because I'm actually having to have a thought-provoking decision-making processes on my character. I have to think about what to do with my character. It doesn't feel as if it's a sprite on a screen being Jesus of Nazareth. Never having to have a problem, never getting damaged, never getting hurt. It's just the Wunderkinder. No, I feel like a pleb. I feel useless. I feel vulnerable. I feel like a naked newborn child.
I died to the same bear more than once yesterday.
It's great.
I didn't need to kill it. It was just in the way.
Yeah, it was there.
I was body pulling it, trying to kill a humanoid next to it, and the same bear got me in the back twice in one play session. I was backing up past a tree to heal, and I hear that roar, and I was like, no, not again, not the same bear.
Yogi,
gotta go.
Hey, boo-boo, let's go.
Right.
Oh.
So I think there's very different attitudes to character as well. You feel more invested in the character because you feel as if you're home to look after it. It's something to be looked after. It's not, it's not just a cruise missile smashing through everything.
So, where can people find you? What are you got working on? Like, honestly, we're absolutely got to get you back just because there is so much to unpack here, and you're always just a fun guy to talk to. Especially
YouTube.com/HeelVsBabyface, at HeelVsBabyface on Twitter, and I got a plug. October next month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, as most of you be aware. I'm actually releasing a special charity mug, which I put out on Twitter, which you're going to have a look at, where all profits, every bit of profit, is going towards breast cancer charities. I will release which one It won't be Susan Corman. Don't worry, people. But I will release which one nearer the time. And so I just want people to be aware of that. Go onto my Twitter, check it out. So yeah, all profit will be going to that. So I've ordered 200. I want to sell all 200. Probably give a couple away as well as little giveaways and stuff. But I want us to make some profit on this. The price is undetermined at the moment because I want to give it up to you as well. So it's going to be like, this is the minimum for one. But if you want to put more, all the profit, every bit of profit will be going to breast cancer charities. So so it's one of those times of the year where I'm actually going to do some shilling. So yeah, check out my Twitter, check out the mug. It's already up there for you to have a look at. It's going to be released October. And if we go, I'd love to order more throughout October if possible, but 200 to start with. 200 on order start.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Chris, what are you working on? Where can people find us?
Last week we had Skill Up on, so we were talking about game reviews and his experience with 14, because he came in to try 14 out, but unlike most reviewers, Skill Up seems to have an unlimited amount of time to put in. Everybody else seems to have like bills they have to pay, and so the review has to come out by a certain date, and Skill Up dumped like 400 hours in and hasn't released the review. So I don't know what kind of business model he's running, but I'm glad it's working for him.
It's working for him.
So I'm really looking forward to his review. Will be coming out at the end of the year, and he got to chat about that with us. And then next week is Paris, talking about the future of PC gaming, Destiny, and all of that. And depending on when that's filmed, I may or may not be here. So I'm about to go out of town, and I'm excited because I'm going to try Shadow X PC from outside of the United States and see if, hopefully, I'm even going to try to fire up a random stream and maybe run like an Eden raid or something like that and see if we can do that. I've been leveling. Right? yeah, going to Scotland. So looking forward to it. And everything's been good here. I'm leveling up in WoW slowly but surely. And then I am just continuing to level. I'm starting to work on crafters now. I'm done with gatherers in 14. I finished up my last gatherer yesterday. Finally, it'd been at 76 or 77 for like 4 weeks. And I just finally buckled in and said, you know what, just do it. So that's done. And what are you doing, Brian?
So I've gone a little mad. And some people in the comment section on some of my videos are like, what is happening? Oh, why are we talking about this? And I've ended up loosely writing an 8-part series with the 8th video kind of being like, all right, so we talked about all these different things. And there's been this underlying theme that connects all of them. And I've kind of put it out on Twitter to see if anybody has any good guesses. The best guess, which is incorrect, but the best guess, because it just made me laugh out of my chair, was somebody said that I'm building up to Half-Life 3 release. And I was like, the internet would lose its effing mind if I say, if Work to Game was like, and now go play Half-Life 3, everybody, you're welcome.
We got the exclusive on it.
We got the exclusive. Yeah, that would be oh my God, I couldn't even imagine. Because it's like, imagine being like this medium-sized YouTube channel and then doing that, you know? But so I went a little mad. I'm sure by the time the 8th video comes out and it all is kind of, the theme is all kind of revealed and comes together, people are going to look at me and be like, dude, you're wasting.
Why did I eat all this cereal? This prize is crap.
Yeah. But anyway, I've been enjoying doing a lot of writing. Later today, my review for Shadow PC is actually going up on the channel. So if you guys check it out, I've been using it since July. I've been putting it through a lot of tests, and I've been loving and playing Gears 5 on it because it plays incredible. And so we'll be talking about that in detail on the channel later today, and more obviously working on Machinist, my controller guide, and leveling up Red Mage. Man, like it's a great time for me to be a gamer. This is game season. Later this month, Dragon Quest XI comes out. Like we were, Az was talking about Destiny 2 at the top of the show, so I'm hyped for Shadowkeep.
I got a little confession.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been getting the Bring Arts Kai Dragon Age 11 figures. Oh God, they're so good.
You're being getting the Dragon Quest 11 figurines?
I love Dragon Quest series. Dragon Quest 11 I've been playing it on the PS4. I've been loving it. And
such a good game. It was my game of the year last year.
They've been releasing the what's called the Bring Arts as opposed to Kai Arts, which like figures about that big. All of that Dragon Age 11, and they're just gorgeous and mwah. They're releasing them very gradually, but I've been getting them as they've been coming out. And,
It's really a good time because they just announced 1 through 3 is also coming to the Switch.
Yes.
And I've been itching. Especially I've been playing Dragon Quest Builders 2 with my daughter, and I'm like, God, I would love to play 2 again. And it's done from the iOS graphics if anybody hasn't seen this stuff, but the cool thing about it is it's also widescreen. And I'm sitting here like, what would I rather have? And I'm like, I think I'm going to be happy with the ability to play it, even though it's not going to be pixel perfect, kind of retro in that regards. But it doesn't need to be in there anyway. But that's what I'm working on. We're going to go and wrap up the podcast. I saw a couple questions for Az, and maybe if he's got a few minutes, I know we've gone over time due to the internet issues. We'll do a little Q&A that we'll post up on the Casually Hardcore Podcast Highlights channel, which you guys should totally subscribe to. We're working our way up to 400. We're hoping to get to 1,000 by the end of the year, so be sure to go and check out the channel and subscribe to it. It really helps us out. But anyway, for Work to Game, my name's Brian.
My name's Chris.
My name's Az.
And he's a pro. Thank you so much for watching this podcast. We will see you next time.